Okay, let's look here at a video lesson we have on synthetic division. Synthetic division will help us do a couple things. It helps us factor polynomials, and it also will help us to divide polynomials. Let's look at a factoring situation first. It says factor f of x is equal to 3x cubed minus 11x squared minus 6x plus 8, given that f of 4 is equal to 0. Well, we're talking about the function f of x, and how about if f of 4 is equal to 0? Well, x would be equal to, well, if you notice there, it's just substitution. X would be equal to 4. So, go back to what you recognize about, or what you remember about factoring. When we factor, we have, just a real quick refresher. If we had, like, say, x squared minus 4 is equal to 0, we break this down. X minus 2, x plus 4 is equal to 0. Well, how do we know what x is equal to? We set each parenthesis equal to 0, and then x is equal to 2 on the left, and x is equal to negative 2 on the right. Well, you notice where we're at. We are here at the very bottom step. Can you come up with this, which is actually one of the parentheses? So we're going to say x plus or minus some number is going to give us 0. Remember the 0 there? So if we are here, x is equal to 4, what number can we plug into the question mark to get 4 here? I'm pretty sure it's negative 4, right? X minus 4 is equal to 0. And then, therefore, x would be equal to 4. You add that 4 to both sides. Okay. So far, so good. So now, what we need to do is take that, and I erased some things that I didn't want to, because I want to show you one other thing here. You notice how we're here at x minus 2 is equal to 0, and then that gives us one of those parentheses? Well, if we are here, x minus 4 is equal to 0, can't we get one of those parentheses as x minus 4? Okay. I'm not quite sure why I put it down there. I was kind of looking ahead towards the end of the problem, but so x minus 4 is going to be one of those factors. We're trying to find factors. At this point, the highest exponent is 3, so we should have 3 factors. It doesn't always work out that way, but you know, ideally we should probably be looking for 3. If we don't get 3, I mean, it's not incorrect. It's just sometimes things end up a little different. But back to what we have. You need to be able to go from f of 4 is equal to 0 to recognizing that we get that factor out of f of 4 is equal to 0. Okay, so that was one step. You got to keep that on the back burner there, because we're going to need that here towards the end. So now what we have to do is we have to use what we're given, which is f of 4 is equal to 0, to determine what the other factors are. All right, so f of 4 is equal to 0. We're going to go ahead and use synthetic division. Synthetic division is set up kind of like this. We're going to have a 4 here and this kind of bracket. We're going to put numbers, just watch this part here. We're going to put numbers up along here, numbers along here, and numbers along here. We just need to know what numbers to put in there. So make your bracket accordingly, or it's not necessarily a bracket, make your synthetic division sign, I guess, accordingly. And where are we getting those numbers from? Coefficients. We're going to look at coefficients. 3, negative 11, negative 6, and positive 8. 3, negative 11, negative 6, positive 8. Leave out the variables and positive signs. You don't really need them because you know that it's positive. And once we get this set up, we know we're ready for synthetic division. All right, this 3 gets dropped down here. Now we take 4 times 3, and what's 4 times 3? 12, and we write that below the 11. And now what do we do here? We're going to add negative 11 and 12. Negative 11 plus 12 should be a positive 1. Next, you go ahead and get that 4 again, multiply it by 1, and that gives you 4. And now add negative 6 plus 4 should be negative 2. Next step, go back to the 4, multiply it by negative 2, and that should give us negative 8. 8 plus negative 8 should be 0, which is what we're looking for. It said that f of 4 is equal to 0, which meant that 4 should be a solution. Therefore, there should not be a remainder. And we do not have a remainder here because there's a 0 there. Okay, now what do? We go back to, and look here. This 3 was x cubed. So this 3 right here is going to be one exponent down, 3x squared. If this is x squared, this is going to be x. And what number is associated with the x? Positive 1. So positive 1x. The 1 is invisible in front of x. And this is going to be the number without a variable, and that just so happens to be negative 2. So this is another factor. What's the original factor that we had? What's the other factor that we know? Remember back to here? F of 4 is equal to 0, so therefore x minus 4 is a factor. And so this is where we're at now. You have a trinomial, so with the trinomial, you should try to factor it even further. Going back to your how to factor trinomials here, we take 3 and negative 2. Okay, the number has to, I put x there for multiply. The number has to multiply to give us negative 6, and it has to add up to give us positive 1. What number would that be? Negative 3, positive 2? Nope, that adds up to give us negative 1. How about negative 2 and positive 3? That ends up to give us a positive 1. Now let's take those and split it up. If we have 3x squared, and we're splitting up x into negative 2x plus 3x, because what's negative 2x plus 3x? Positive 1x. So now let's factor out what is in 3x squared minus 2x. Well, x is in there. And what's left over? 3x minus 2. What's in 3x and negative 2? There's nothing. It's in 3x. It's also a negative 2 except a 1. So I'm going to leave the invisible 1 outside of this parentheses. And we have 3x minus 2. Close that parentheses. Let me put brackets in all of this, because remember, we have x minus 4 outside. also. Go ahead and bring down x minus 4. 3x minus 2 and 3x minus 2, it should be, those parentheses should be the same, and that's why they get put together in one parentheses together. And then this number here and this number here get put in the second parenthesis, or actually in this case, the third parentheses there, x plus 1. So now we have the three factors. We have the three factors of our original function up here, right here. When you split that up, you get those three factors. Okay, we're going to move on. If you feel comfortable enough to do this on your own, do this example on your own. If you feel like you're having some trouble, then work along with me. Remember, since f of negative 4 is equal to 0, that means that negative 4 is a solution. So since negative 4 is a solution, we can use synthetic division to figure out what the other factor is going to be. Remember, f of negative 4 is a solution, so that must mean x plus 4 is one factor already. We're going to keep that on the back burner. We're going to use it there at the end. So now let's look at coefficients. 1, 1, negative 10, and 8. 1, 1, negative 10, and 8. You notice the exponents are 3, 2, 1, and 0. You have to make sure you pay attention to that, because if there is one of them that does not have, like if we had x cubed minus x plus 4, when you did your synthetic division, you would have to go 1, 0 x squared, negative 1, and positive 4. You do have to have the zeros in there for the missing variables and exponents. In this case, x squared was the missing one, so make sure you put that 0 in there to hold its place. Going back to the problem that we're working on, let's look at this. 1 gets dropped down. Negative 4 times 1 should be negative 4. Add those two numbers together. Negative 3. Negative 4 times negative 3 should be negative 12. Actually, that's a positive 12. Negative times a negative is a positive. Add negative 10 and positive 12 together. That gives you a positive 2. Let me make that 2 look a little bit better here. So that's positive 2, and then now negative 4 times positive 2 will give us negative 8, which then will positive 8, negative 8 makes 0, which is what we're looking for. Since negative 4 was a solution, we should not get a remainder. All right, our factors, x plus 4. Remember, it comes from this one. And right here, let's look here. We had x cubed here, so this was x cubed. So this one goes down one exponent to become 1x squared. Bring this down to be negative 3x, and this comes down to be a positive 2. Since we have 1 as a leading coefficient here in this parentheses, this one should be easy to factor if it's factorable. Can you give me two numbers that multiply to get 2 that add up to give you negative 3? Negative 2 times negative 1 will multiply to give you positive 2, and they also add up to give you negative 3. So right here are your three factors. All right, there's your three factors. Okay, so that's how you use synthetic division. Synthetic division, this right here is synthetic division. That's how you use synthetic division to factor. Using synthetic division to divide is pretty much the same thing, except you're dividing by x minus 3. We do not put x minus 3 outside of the synthetic division sign here. What do we put outside of it? Well, remember, if we had f of 4 was equal to 0, the factor that we would get out of this was x minus 4. And do you see how x minus 3 and x minus 4 are similar? You know, there's two terms there. It's binomial. So this is the number that we would put outside the synthetic division. So in this case up here, what number do we put outside of synthetic division? That was negative there. This was positive. If this is negative, we put a positive. You always put the opposite. When you're doing the division like this, you put the opposite outside, the opposite sign of the number. So we have the positive 3 outside, and what are we going to put inside? Here is x cubed, so that's a 1. And this is x. Where's x squared? It has a 0 in front of it. X has a negative 10 in front of it, and then negative 24 does not have a variable out there. And then so we use synthetic division here. Drop down the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Add those two numbers together. 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Add negative 10 and 9 to give you negative 1. And 3 times negative 1 should be negative 3. And you add negative 24 and negative 3 and gives you negative 27. Now we are dividing here. So what we are supposed to do is we're supposed to, if this is x cubed, this was x cubed, so this one becomes x squared. So we have 1x squared, we have 3x, we have a negative 1, and this number right here is our remainder plus 27 over top of 27 over top of, we don't want to put 3 there, remember we have to use this, x minus 3. And so, there you go. When you have this polynomial and you divide it by this polynomial, this is what you'll get. Okay. Let me give you one example of that to try on your own, and then you follow along with my follow along with my work to make sure you're correct. Okay, we're doing synthetic division, so that's x plus 2. We want to put a negative 2 out there. Let's go 3x squared plus 10x plus 8. So all of the exponents are there, 2, 1, and 0. And now let's do synthetic division. Drop down the 3. Negative 2 times 3 should be negative 6. And now let's add. 10 plus negative 6 should be 4. Negative 2. Negative 2 times 4 should be negative 8. And add 8 and negative 8 should give us 0. And remember, there's no remainder there, which probably would tell you if we were factoring or if we were solving, negative 2 would be a solution. Would be a root or would be a 0. So let's look here now. We started out with x squared, so this should be x. 3x, that's a positive 4, plus, well, there's no remainder, so we don't need to add anything else to it. And so that's where we're at. That's all we have on synthetic division.